and for the next half hour, I'll be reading from the August 6th, 2026 issue of the River Rock Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Gather and Game makes a new home on Amherst Street. On a recent Friday night, Gather and Game on Amherst Street was buzzing with activity. In the front corner, in front of a large window, a group of people were talking through a new tabletop game, discussing possible move combinations before making decisions. Upstairs, many of the Mezzanines tables were filled with groups of 2, 4, or more people talking and laughing while playing together. In the 2 months since moving from the store's location on Grant Street over to Amherst Street, Gather and Game has established itself as a welcoming space for people who have been playing board and tabletop games for years, in addition to those who are new to the experience. We started out as a used bookstore, West Side Stories, in 2011, says Joe Petrie, who owns the store with his wife, Janine. Games were added a couple years later, and eventually the games piece kind of outgrew the space. We spun the game store off separately and maintained both stores for a year, before the pandemic hit, and they didn't think they could feasibly keep both locations operational. They were able to find someone to purchase West Side Stories, which is now in a new location on Grant Street very close to where Gather and Game used to be, until the move to Amherst Street in June. Petrie likes to stress that customers won't find video games at Gather and Game. This is an analog haven where people sit and play and strategize and work together, in person, not through screens. He thinks that might be contributing to the store's success, along with the variety of titles they're able to carry. It's that variety of games that made the move to Amherst Street enticing. The former location had 1,200 square feet for both retail and game playing space, while the new location is 5,000 square feet in the retail space alone, in addition to the mezzanine at the rear of the store, which is almost as big as the former operation altogether. It was once home to Shunk Furniture. We weren't going to move unless it was significantly more space, but we also really wanted to stay in the neighborhood, he says. Those two criteria were kind of hard to find. When the storefront at 463 Amherst became available earlier this year, after a dance studio and other previous tenants moved out, the Petries knew it was the opportunity they were looking for. We just knew there were no compromises needed to make it work. It's ideal for what we wanted to do, he says. We wanted this big increased retail footprint, but we also wanted significantly more space for people to come and play. With the mezzanine as well as the 5,000 square feet on the floor, it offered the best of both worlds for us, expanding the number of available tables from 5 to 25. With their handful of employees, they started working on repainting the interior of the shop, packing up the old location, and doing inventory at the same time, because efficiency is key with a small team, and made the big move 1 mile into Black Rock in June. More space means more opportunities for programming as well. Gather and Game offers regular learn-to-play classes for a variety of games, from trading card games like Magic: The Gathering, to miniature figurine games like Warhammer, to old-school favorites like Dungeons and Dragons. The store has a robust monthly calendar behind the cash register to keep patrons notified of what events are coming up. But sometimes people just pop in to see who's around and whether there's a game in progress they can join. If there can be pick-up basketball games on playgrounds, why not pick up board games too? Now it's becoming self-perpetuating. because a lot of people who've been doing that have made connections and gained groups here, Petrie says, beaming. Now, it's not just coming to the pickup game, it's seeing a community that they feel connected to and are a part of. Not only is the sense of community expanding, there's plenty of room for more stock as well. In the old store, we didn't have that much inventory. It was highly cramped, jam-packed floor to ceiling. Now we have the room to display more, he says. We were laughing in the first week. We had a number of things that were sitting on a shelf for years that were just stuck at a bottom shelf in the old space, where it was really easy to miss, that sold within a week of being on display here. Now we actually have room to merchandise stuff. Plus, they've expanded to add puzzles and more smaller two-person or small group games as well. The Gather and Game staff have quickly become familiar with BlackRock, often stepping next door to Dapper Goose for a staff dinner or meeting. Petrie has known the owner of Nine and Night, the Thai restaurant, for a number of years, and Janine Petrie has used AE Fit 716, the exercise studio, for a long time as well. And because Gather and Game is open until 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday nights, it's not uncommon to see people wander in off Amherst Street after they've finished dinner at one of the nearby establishments. The other benefit of a bigger space is special events, like the upcoming seasonal release from Magic the Gathering card game that will be available at Gather and Game. The idea is to get people together to buy new cards, available a week early to independent stores, and then give them room to trade cards and play right away. It's not the same as midnight release parties for books from several years ago, but it's an interactive way to bring fans together and let them experience something new and exciting before it's available at larger retailers. Those bigger stores might offer convenience, but they don't have that community space, he says. If you want to be part of a community and meet other players, you need a physical space to do that. That's kind of Wizards of the Coast's way and Hasbro's way of acknowledging independent stores are an integral part of the ecosystem to make the game work. The Petries have lots of ideas for the space. There's a whole second floor at the front of the building that can be utilized in the future, in addition to an area that used to be a recording studio. But for now, they're enjoying having more room to breathe and to play in their new home. Gather and Game is open 12 to 9 p.m. Tuesday through Thursday, 12 to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sundays. More information, including a list of upcoming events, can be found on the store's website, www.gatherandgame.com, and on social media. Live from Amherst Street, it was Friday night. Sunny skies and warm temperatures greeted the people gathered in front of A&E Fit 716 and Cornai Caribbean Kitchen, among other locations Friday night for the inaugural Amherst Street Live, sponsored by the Grant Amherst Business Association with support from Erie County legislator Michael Kuzhoen and North District Council member Joe Golembeck. There was a little something for everyone as bands played in parking lots and sidewalks to share their music with the community. Spontaneous dancing was encouraged by Pharaoh Simba in front of Cornai Caribbean Kitchen, the newest restaurant to open on Amherst Street. The three-piece La Marimba band brought a calliope spirit to the space in front of A&E Fit 716, attracting curious passerby and drawing a few people out from Casey's across the street. A crowd brought their own seats out on the corner of Bush and Amherst to watch the Abrupters play some ska tunes in front of Allentown Music. In front of the Black Rock Historical Society, Tyler Bagwell shared his love of Bob Dylan songs, while Lauren Clifford offered an accompaniment to patrons at Raha Coffee House on the corner of Grant and Amherst. Everything was positive, says Joe Maniaci, owner of Allentown Music and president of the Grant Amherst Business Association. All of the musicians were happy. They seemed to be a nice vibe all around. There were definitely more people out on Amherst than usual. Buoyed by the success of the initial outing, delayed by 2 weeks due to the poor air quality earlier in July, Maniaci is already looking ahead to next summer, saying he hopes to add more dates and more venues next year. Presentation to look at arrest of Leon Czolgosz. The Black Rock Historical Society will present the arrest of Leon Czolgosz on Saturday, August 29th, from noon to 3 p.m. at the historic police station number 13, 346 Austin Street, Buffalo. Czolgosz shot United States President William McKinley in 1901 at the Pan American Exposition. A historic perspective of his arrest will be given by Patrick Ryan of the Richardson Olmsted campus. His confession, in his own words, will be interpreted by Jonathan White of Forest Lawn Cemetery. Building tours will be given by Andy and Julie McClellan. The event is free and open to the public. BMHA sued by over Schaefer Village project. Buffalo Business First reported August 4th that Buffalo Equitable Housing Collective sued the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority after it was fired from the Schaefer Village redevelopment project in Riverside. Buffalo Equitable Housing Collaborative, a partnership between the JHM Group of Connecticut and Penman Development of Williamsville, was fired last summer. According to Buffalo Business First, the BMHA said the collaborative missed key deadlines and was ill-equipped to perform the redevelopment work, which was the demolition and reconstruction of Schaefer Village. Reportedly, the collaborative would have earned between $14 million and $133 million in development fees. The Schaefer Village project would include demolishing the existing buildings, 233 apartments, and constructing 41 buildings with 217. BMHA Executive Director Jillian Brown told Business First, the Schaefer Village project is in limbo, but will move forward. He said, redevelopment of Schaefer Village remains one of BMHA's top priorities, and we will continue to explore our various options. Poll. New Yorkers support War on Fraud campaign. An overwhelming majority of New Yorkers support federal efforts to crack down on fraud in the state's public benefit programs, according to a new poll. The survey conducted by the State Financial Officers Foundation, released on Monday, found that 85% of voters are concerned, very or somewhat, about waste, fraud, or abuse of taxpayer dollars in New York State government programs. At least 72% of those surveyed said reducing waste, fraud, and abuse should be a top or very high priority for the New York State government. This new survey confirms that the war on fraud is popular and that even most New Yorkers want their state leaders to enlist in it. O.J. Oleka, the foundation CEO, said in a statement. Ironically, as some politicians foolishly look to bigger government programs and higher tax bills to fix New York's affordability problems, most New Yorkers actually blame government waste, fraud, and abuse for the state's rise in living costs. Among the factors New Yorkers believe contribute, in part, to higher costs for taxpayers were individuals or organizations intentionally defrauding government programs, 77%. People exploiting government programs in ways they were not intended to be used, 76%, and government programs that duplicate services already provided elsewhere, 68%, according to the Foundation's report. Only 36% of New Yorkers are confident that the New York state government is currently doing enough to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse, pollsters found. Nearly 8 in 10 voters agreed that the New York state government needs stronger oversight and accountability measures to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse and ensure taxpayer dollars are spent effectively, according to the Foundation's survey. The poll comes as New York faces a fraud crackdown after the Trump administration deployed a strike force of investigators to the state to recover hundreds of millions in unemployment bogus payments. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the River Rock Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The U.S. Department of Labor and its Inspector General's office announced last month a joint effort to confront serious unemployment insurance fraud and performance breakdowns across one of the nation's highest risk states. The agencies said fraud and improper payments in the system is fleecing New York taxpayers of an estimated $2 million a day. New York has the highest unemployment insurance fraud rate in the country at 15%, with an estimated $507 million in bogus payments in 2025, according to the Labor Department. It also has the highest improper payment rate at 23%, DOL said, which cost taxpayers $750 million last year. That's roughly a loss of $2 million per day to fraud and improper payments, the agency claimed. President Donald Trump has threatened to cut off federal funding for New York and other Democrat-run states if they don't improve oversight of Medicaid, food stamps, and other public benefit payments. In Congress, the Republican-led House Committee on Energy and Commerce recently launched a probe into Medicaid fraud in 10 states, including New York, Vermont, and Maine, demanding records from governors and state agencies related to their anti-fraud protections. Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul has defended the state's anti-fraud protections and says the state is taking steps to safeguard taxpayer dollars from abuse. 42 years of warnings, 6 years to insolvency. Taxpayers Protection Alliance. In the 500 months, or 42 years, since Social Security's trustees resumed warning of the program's coming deficits, retirees have seen their checks arrive promptly. This luxury will soon come to an end, absent significant reforms. After all, current benefits are calculated according to the same unsustainable formula that is leading to the depletion of the program's trust fund 6 years hence. The imminence of Social Security's fiscal crisis is slowly registering with Congress. There needs to be a greater sense of urgency. This week, the Senate Finance Committee held a hearing on exploring process approaches for addressing Social Security solvency. Lawmakers have little time left to contemplate how to act, but act they must, or else Americans' benefits will be in grave danger. Social Security's fiscal outlook has deteriorated dramatically. In 1996, Henry J. Aaron of the Brookings Institution asserted that Social Security is adequately funded for the next 30 years. It, in fact, reduces the federal budget deficit. 3 decades on, another Brookings scholar, Jessica Riedel, argues that for the last 16 years, Social Security has contributed to budget deficits, adding $250 billion, or 0.8% of GDP, to this year's $1.8 trillion shortfall. Moreover, The gap between the program's revenues and benefits costs will widen to 1.4% of GDP within a decade. Worse, Congress's option of waiting until the last minute before the trust fund's exhaustion and then using budget deficits to finance all future shortfalls would lead Social Security to add $48 trillion to budget deficits over 30 years, Riedel warns. The price index Social Security uses likely overstates inflation, resulting in inflated cost of living adjustments over time. More importantly, the growth of initial benefits for new retirees surpasses even inflation. The ever larger purchasing power of payouts to successive generations results from lawmakers' 1977 decision to index Social Security's base benefits to average wages, which, by virtue of productivity growth, have increased faster than the average price level. Not only was the 1935 Social Security Act framed to give Americans some measure of protection against poverty-ridden old age, but it was also conceived under vastly different demographic assumptions. Life expectancy at age 65 is now roughly 7 years longer on average than it was in 1940. But Congress last raised the full retirement age in 1983 by only 2 years. Furthermore, due to their baby boom generation retiring, Social Security now supports more than 70 million beneficiaries, whose benefits are financed by payroll taxes paid by roughly 185 million covered workers, compared with roughly 43 million beneficiaries supported by 141 million workers 30 years earlier. The worker-to-beneficiary ratio has thus fallen from 3.3 to approximately 2.6, and is projected to reach 1.9 by 2075. Needless to say, Congress must reverse the program's current precarious path. And only Congress can do it. It can begin with something as modest and as intuitive as slowing the automatic benefit expansions built into the program's design. A 2023 Hoover Institution study concluded that had price indexing instead of wage indexing been enacted in 1977, it would have preserved the inflation-adjusted values of recipients' initial benefits, but averted the program's looming insolvency. If implemented in 2032, indexing initial benefits to prices would close 74% of Social Security's long-term funding gap, and even yield a surplus beginning in 2079, while maintaining the purchasing power of average starting benefits. Likewise, switching from the current COLA formula to a more accurate measure, such as the Chained Consumer Price Index, could close an estimated 16% of the long-term funding gap. Lawmakers could also reconsider the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget's six-figure limit. This proposal would cap a couple's combined annual Social Security benefits at $100,000. Affecting only the wealthiest 0.05% of couples today, and curtail future benefit growth largely for seniors with six-figure post-retirement incomes and million-dollar net worths. Although it would not fix the deficit by itself, such a change would starkly diverge from Congress's decades-long inaction on entitlement reform. Social Security's trustees have long warned that the retirement of the baby boom generation, starting in about 2010, would cause Social Security costs to increase rapidly and produce imbalance in the 75-year program. The trustees urged Congress to address the imbalance in a timely way. Lawmakers had 3.5 decades until the retirement trust fund's projected depletion, ample time to discuss and evaluate alternative solutions with deliberation and care. Since then, they have enacted not a single Social Security reform aimed to improve program finances. If left unreformed, the Social Security will falter, either in 2032, when scheduled benefits would automatically and indiscriminately for all retirees fall by 22%, or later, if Congress uses deficit financing to postpone those cuts until a debt crisis forces lawmakers to abruptly cut spending, raise taxes, or likely do both at once. Without the luxury of ample time, the need for congressional action grows dire because of the dreary alternatives that would inevitably follow doing nothing. The bisons are back. With the reintroduction of the iconic beast by Native American tribes, something else returned: the environment, creatures, and culture. Anyone can love the mountains, but it takes a soul to love the prairie, wrote Willa Cather, author of O Pioneers, the saga of early westward struggles and the kind of character it took to appreciate the harsh and immense beauty of the plains. Back then, the vast grasslands were often described as a great sea, with a sky above that filled the view, both in constant motion. The clouds were driven by their own currents, while the waves of grass undulated to a different force altogether. It took weeks to ford the grasslands in those days, but pioneers were not the first inhabitants. The Native Americans of the Great Plains had lived off the land for many generations. To see them atop their horses, striding through the currents of golden grass, was surely a majestic sight. The Comanche roamed most widely because of their horseback skills. The Sioux Nation, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Crow, Blackfoot, and Pawnee tribes also made their lives in a territory nearly the size of Mexico that washed across the middle of North America. And there were bison, millions of them. The American buffalo, more properly called a bison because it's a different species than buffalo of Africa and Asia, has great spiritual significance to America's first people. It represents life and abundance. A 2,000-pound animal is a lot of meat. Nearly every part of the bison was utilized for food, tools, clothing, and shelter. It's hard for us to imagine the verdant plains with grass as tall as a horse's shoulder, and great herds of bison accompanied by deer, antelope, and elk. The prairie provided everything a civilization needed, until the bison were gone. With the slaughter of the herds, the game herds diminished, native plants disappeared, drought and dust followed. Sadly, the land would lie depleted for over 150 years. But since 2014, Tonka Fund, a tribal-led nonprofit, has been creating a network of native bison ranchers. In those 11 years, they have restored over 2,500 head of bison to 100,000 acres of land. Bringing back the buffalo has been symbolic of tribes regaining their place on the land. It has also brought about an unexpected recovery of the prairie ecosystem. The massive animals churn up the ground and fertilize for future growth. They plow through deep snow and uncover grass the deer and antelope cannot get to on their own. Water gathers in their wallows, encouraging the return of native plants that can be harvested for food and medicine. The lands inhabited by bison are teeming with a variety of life. Even lands still reeling from the Dust Bowl of a century ago are coming back to life. With the help of the Tonka Fund and the ranchers committed to the return of the bison, The Great Plains are making a great comeback. It is an example to us all that recovery and abundance are possible. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Thursday, August 6th,